Hello, Caitlin.
Hey.
We're back for another conversation. So, we talked about the void recently, and we actually felt like, with things we're observing in the collective right now, that there is a general sense of a lull that is present in society as well. And
Mm-hmm.
we
For
wanted to take
context, it's January. We're getting to the end into the end of January.
it is
So
January 20th,
we're in the middle of winter.
it's Inauguration Day. And we wanted to take a moment to actually define what is the difference between the void and the lull, and then also offer some actionable steps to kind of help people maybe get unstuck in that lull. So,
Mm.
Kate, what would be the difference between the void and the lull?
Since it's funny because we're actually not recording this right after we recorded the void conversation. We're actually a few conversations out from that. But we felt like this conversation really built on it very well, and wanted to kind of release it also when we're in right timing with winter and still being in winter, so that there was really the greatest benefit for you. So when we talked about the void being really a fundamental disconnection from yourself, you've drifted so far away from your soul, the essence at your core of who you are and your being, that you're feeling kind of lost and you don't really know where you are, who you are, what you're doing anymore. And it's very much a feeling of stuck, but you're stuck and you have no idea like what way is up, what way is down, how to get out. It's
You're in oblivion.
yeah, the void. And so
The black hole.
where a lull is different is that I feel like a lot of people collectively are feeling like they're in a lull right now. And I think a lot of that is getting attributed to the winter time. And there is a seasonality to life and a rhythm. And we can see that mirrored to us in nature and in the time of winter and what happens in the winter time around us. But a lull really being when you're just feeling like you're kind of in a funk. You might feel like you're stuck. You know what you should be doing, but maybe you don't have the motivation to get it going. Maybe you're feeling like you're just spinning your wheels and nothing's really going right. And for me, in my own seasonality, a lull can kind of come through in the later stages of my cycle, like luteal phase, and then as I move into menstrual phase and begin my own inner winter, that's when I'll feel a lull the most. Things kind of slow down almost to a halt, and if we cast judgment on it, we can start to feel like, what's wrong with me? And start to question ourselves and make it wrong to be in that kind of a lull. But there's actually a lot of gold that can be mined from times like this. So we wanted to talk about, what do you do when you're feeling like you're in a slump, in a lull? How can you approach it in a way that is of benefit to you? What is there for you to glean from it, and to the gold that's there for you to mine for it? And how can you really make it into kind of like a transformational alchemical experience to give you the fuel to then progress forward from that?
Well, I'm glad you talked about the lull in terms of maybe not being kind to yourself if you're starting to recognize that you're in it, because that's the shame blame game. So if you start playing that shame blame game, then we could end up in a position where we perpetually keep ourselves in that cycle, never giving us the opportunity to actually get out of that inertial state and go ahead and be generative and take action. So
Yeah.
we have to allow ourselves some grace in recognizing the lull, but then using the lull with intent to go ahead and drive precise action going forward. And that's where responsibility and accountability comes in, where we
Yeah.
have to have awareness to go ahead and just take radical responsibility, which is something you talked about with the void as well.
Yeah.
You still need radical responsibility to go ahead and move and navigate through the lull, and you're giving the lull now a purpose. It's no different than the bear hibernating in the winter. The bear's not doing nothing. It's actually being very intentional in its rest, because it spent all of this time in the spring and the summer gathering, hunting, gaining resources, preparing, because it knew that it had a necessary lull and rest coming up. But that is actually still serving a purpose. It's not just a mindless, aimless wandering, which a lot of times people end up in that lull cycle and they allow it to just be them going from having direction to just being a wanderer. And then that's where we really get stuck.
Yeah. So if you keep yourself, and it's very easy to do because I think we're all conditioned in our society to look at ourselves as really machines who should constantly be productive or be working at a certain level and be super efficient and whatnot. And when you go into a lull or you're kind of in a little bit of a slump or a funk and you're not operating to the capacity that maybe you feel like you should be, it's very kind of ingrained in us to cast judgment on ourselves with that and to view that as being wrong or like, what is wrong with me? And that kind of thinking, like you said, is going to keep you stuck in a cycle where now you are looping and fixating on the judgment of what is wrong with me? Why am I in this place? Like, got to get out of this. And you're trying to force something to happen and you're just going to keep spinning your wheels in that place versus saying, okay, what is here for me? Why is this happening for me? What purpose is this serving for me? What do I have to learn from this? And I actually had to sit with my own medicine for this just this past month with my cycle. When I went into my bleed, very much went into a lull and just wanted to kind of be still and present and inward, and wasn't being as outward as I had been before. And I went to what is wrong with me. Am I now disconnected from source, from creativity? What is going on? What's wrong? And when I sat with it and I said, what judgment am I casting on this? Like, how can I remove that judgment and what is there to learn? The whole message was about not casting judgment on it. And instead, I was able to look at this and see these lessons that were waiting for me in this time of being more introspective and being within myself. There was a lot that was waiting for me to come through and to mine into if I was just willing to be comfortable in sitting still and being present. And when we resist that, we end up staying in this lull or in this funk longer than we need to because we're pushing against it, we're resisting it instead of surrendering to it and allowing it to be, so that we can be in a state of receivership to receive whatever message needs to come through for us during that time. When you're resisting it and trying to force something to come a bit, honestly, it's a false force, because that whatever you're trying to force to occur is not actually coming from a genuine source of creation. You're forcing it to happen. That's of your ego. And anything forced is really not going to be true and not going to be genuine. It's not going to be of you. Versus if you sit and you allow the messages to come through of the time of the lull, what message does this have for me? What am I supposed to learn in this? And just kind of allowing it to be. That ability to surrender to it allows you to then receive that message. And I feel like this is naturally more of a feminine ability or aspect for people to be able to be in surrender and receivership that is inherently more feminine. And I can see how the masculine would really push against that a lot more and try to do that more like that resistance and exerting force against it.
I've grappled with this, and I'm actually just thinking out loud right now, but there's this aspect of releasing the resistance, but it's not actually, I don't think it's releasing, at least for the masculine. I think it's an aspect of mastering the resistance. So if we can master the resistance that's within us, then we can actually alchemize that to drive that precise action. So in this case, if we're allowing the lull to keep us in that perpetual shame, blame, and keeping us stuck, then it's not serving us. But if we're allowing it to be an inward moment that's giving us the opportunity to breathe, rest, reset, be present, and then receive whatever messages it is, then it's giving us that fuel to go ahead and take that precise action to go ahead and generate the thing that's going to get us out of the lull and back into purpose.
And I think going along with what you said, the first step of mastering that resistance is your consciousness. Like your conscious awareness of it. Because if you are not consciously aware of what is going on in your life and the feelings and emotions, the thoughts in your head around what you're experiencing. There is no possible mastery of it because you're not actually aware of it.
Yeah.
But
Totally
when
right.
you become aware of it, then you are able to take a masterful seat of looking at it from almost like an unattached third person perspective, an outside point of view. Yeah, zoom out and look down at it and see what's going on. And then you can kind of decipher these little pieces from it. I feel like that's a more masculine point.
That's why I
point of
said this might be
view.
for the
yeah,
masculine.
It's like in my body that feels inherently more masculine
I think so.
to do it that way.
Yeah, I think so. But again, that's why we're here, because we represent both aspects of the duality of the masculine and feminine relationship, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, I do feel, though, that in my experience with the men's work in particular, the stuckness that men are experiencing, also there is an aspect of the martyr at play that keeps us stuck. Well, I need to take care of my family. I have to put food on the table. I made my choices. This is now, you make your bed and you lie in it kind of thing. So there's this aspect of resistance that's just building, 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 that's keeping us on that proverbial hamster wheel, that's not then allowing us to go ahead and do that thing that might actually allow us to shift the tide and go ahead and live more of a life of meaning and purpose. Because our meaning all of a sudden just turns into, eat, work, sleep, rinse, repeat, just do the whole cycle over and over, because we're just trying to pay the bills and provide. So there's that masculine frame that we keep ourselves in, like, this is my role, and then we self-sacrifice and we're the martyr to not allowing ourselves to fully express. But our partner might be in a lull where they're feeling stuck and lack of purpose, etc. It might be because of the maiden to mother transition. It might be because of identity issues, like whatever it is. So there could be both of you in a different type of lull.
I was going to say, it's funny that you say that for men it becomes like a martyr situation, like martyr archetype situation, because that's the case for a lot of women too. Is we will look at ourselves as the martyr, and I need to sacrifice myself for this time that I would be spending on myself to take care of my family, the roles
child,
that I
right?
play. And so that's where I think that, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because having an open and honest channel of communication between you and your partner is so vital. Because if Miles were to say, I'm feeling stuck because I feel like I need to do X, Y, or Z, and then I would be able to come to him and say, well, I'm feeling stuck too because I'm feeling like I need to do X, Y, Z. I don't want you to feel that way. I'm glad you brought this up to me, but I don't want you to have to feel that way. Like, we're okay. You can take the pressure of this, this, and this off of yourself. We're going to be okay. And then Miles can say to me, I have some time today. Why don't you take an hour to yourself and get recentered and, pour into yourself a little bit so that then you can do what you need to do to fill up your cup.
That's one of the things that in our relationship, we need the most, is that time and space, so that when you do have that lull, it's inevitable. It's not like we don't have a lull, right? You just talked about experiencing with your cycle.
Yeah.
Time and space is that opportunity to go ahead and reappropriate when you have those identity questions that come in inevitably. It's like, oh, well, what is wrong with me? Did I lose all the energy I just had a week ago? Like, what, am I going backwards? It's like, no, like, just take some time and space, go outside, get connected to nature, get connected to God, and remember that your identity hasn't changed just because you hit a lull. It's just an opportunity for a reset.
And that, just like you said, this most recent experience with coming full circle in my cycle and going through my bleed was very potent reminder of that. Is that I very quickly went into an old pattern of saying, what is wrong with me? I've now lost something. I've lost my connection, like, to source, to my creativity. And I had to kind of like mother myself and say, you're looking at this the wrong way. You haven't lost anything. This is your natural rhythm. This is your natural rhythm in your body with your cycle, but this is also the natural rhythm of your external environment right now. It's the end of January, so it's winter. This doesn't mean anything negative about you. You haven't lost anything, but there is meaning in this for you. It's not the negative meaning that you're assigning to it so quickly.
The key word is, you said, for rather than to. And in this case, there's seasonality in your cycle, there's seasonality in our relationship, and there's seasonality in literally the seasons of nature.
Yeah.
So in this case as well, is how are we relating in these different seasons. So in a relationship dynamic, if my wife is in a lull, that just means it's an opportunity for me to go ahead and step up as a man to give her some of that space to get out of the lull, and vice versa.
Right.
So then she can return and swing the pendulum back to me when that moment is happening. So instead of us judging one another, we're actually supporting one another.
I do want to go back to what we just talked about, though, with having a open line of communication with each other. Miles and I, in our relationship, we have a very direct and open line of communication with each other.
Sometimes a little too direct.
A little too direct sometimes, where I'll have to voice to Miles, or Miles will have to voice to me, like, I need a little bit more softness from you. And it can kind of get us into trouble sometimes with how we
that's
communicate
really me to
with
you.
other people because we're so used to communicating very directly with each other. We're both like Aries sun, and we just...
A lot of fire.
Yeah, there's a lot of fire, a lot of directness there, a lot of very strong energy, and we're used to that with each other. But you really just need a very clean, open line of communication with each other, because let's say you're in a lull and you don't have that communication with your partner, and you're feeling like you're even more in a lull, they're not giving you the chance to get out of it. Maybe you're falling into that martyr or victim archetype role. Now, all of a sudden, not only are you in a place with yourself where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me, and you're like beating yourself up for it, but now you're also looking at your partner from a place of resentment, and you're feeling a certain way about them that's not positive. And so you're compounding on the way that you made yourself feel wrong about this, and now you're also making your partner wrong for it, because you're not just being open with them and telling them what's going on for you. And what's really important about this is that when you communicate with your partner about what's going on with you, take responsibility and take inner authority for what is going on with you, because it is with you and not with that person. You cannot approach a situation like this in a way that's going to yield anything constructive by approaching it from a place of blame.
Right.
A better way, and you know, maybe you are in a situation where your partner is not giving you as much time as you need for yourself, like that time and space. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you are in a situation where you're not getting that from your partner, but that's where we need to turn within and ask, have I been asking for that? Have I been clear in the fact that this is one of my needs and I need time for that? Have I been prioritizing that for myself?
Or are you playing the martyr?
Yeah, I have fallen into that trap many times where I let things that we need to get done in our life to keep things moving, things with our son, take precedence over myself. And then I end up getting angry and resentful and just like very short fused, because I have let these things come before me, but that was my own conscious decision to do it. I might have made that decision unconsciously, but it was my own decision to allow that to happen.
But this is where it requires a partner who's willing to say that hard truth. Hey, I didn't force you to actually make these decisions. These were not my directives.
It doesn't, yes, that's a very direct way of saying it. I wouldn't recommend that to everybody.
We're not telling you how to do this. We're just sharing.
But
it's me witnessing a pattern in that moment, though, and then willing to say, "Hey, actually, these were decisions you made."
Or like a really beautiful way of approaching it would be to say, "Hey, I've noticed that you haven't been taking any time for yourself, and I think this would really be beneficial for you. I think you would come into a much better place with yourself. How can I support you in that?" You know, that's a much softer, gentler way of approaching it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's where your own inner authority needs to come first, of recognizing these patterns and these things that are going on in your life, taking responsibility for them, and then doing what you need to do to kind of bring them to a close and like change the tides on what you're doing in your life. It's that this is no longer a pattern of yours. You are establishing a new pattern and a new habit.
And if we were to look at this like big picture though, and zoom out for a second, so we talk about the lull. Someone's likely feeling some expression of stuckness. There is this aspect possibly of some shame, blame going on. There's possibly this aspect of internal resentment and external resentment toward other. And there is also this aspect of maybe even some self-betrayal, some self-isolation. So there's a lot of negativity that could quickly be attached to this lull that can keep you in that perpetual stuck state. So if we were to help empower people to move out of the lull, what would be some of the first action steps? And you talked about consciousness, right? We needed conscious
Yeah.
awareness
Yeah.
as one of those first pieces. But what would be some of those other pieces that have helped you actually step out of maybe even just this most recent lull?
Yeah. Well, like we said, conscious awareness of what is going on, the ability to kind of sit in the seat of being in the director role of your life and seeing what is going on and what's at play and the dynamics that are happening around you and what your part is in them, what your role is. I just had something on my mind and now it slipped.
That's
So
okay.
let you
We
take
will keep going. So what I think is important to note here, though, is that the inner authority that Kate was referencing and also just your general responsibility
I got it.
is important to actualize and act on in order to help you exit the lull and step into a life of more purpose and meaning. So you seem to have your thought back.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The word reparenting is thrown around a lot now. It's very trendy. I've never quite resonated with that word myself personally. If you do, wonderful. But like what I needed to do in this most recent phase for me was to take a seat of softness with myself to be able to remove that judgment from the situation, that judgment of myself for being in that lull or that slump, that funk. And really, you can look at it as reparenting yourself, being your own parent in a woman's case, being your own mother and your best mother, the mother that you wish you had in all moments. Or you can look at it as taking the seat of your highest self, your most high emanation of yourself, and guiding yourself through and showing yourself through lightness and through love. This is not something to cast judgment on. This is something that my body is being guided to go through and to experience because there is something in it for me. And there is a message in this for me. So instead of in my mind, because the only thing that's making you feel wrong about this is your ego and your mind, your self-judgment. So instead of listening to your mind, which is just going to keep running and running and running, you need to take a more empowered, higher self stance to this situation and say, we are not going to go into judgment. We're not going to follow temptation down into judgment and just
Be curious.
well, also not allow our ego to just kind of like roam free and relish in this whole like self-loathing thing that our ego loves to do. But I'm going to claim dominion over myself and my conscious thoughts and realize that this is not a place for judgment or self-loathing, but there is gold in here for me. And so I'm going to take the higher road and the higher consciousness and decide that this has meaning in it for me. And what are the things that this is trying to show me right now in my life? What is this lull pointing out to me? Am I feeling this in my body? Does it feel like a pull or like a tension? Is there something that intuitively I'm trying to withdraw from because I know it's not in alignment with me? Am I feeling a lull because I've fallen into inertia and now I'm just getting complacent and not wanting to put forth effort in the way that I know is my responsibility and my part of this equation to get to where I want to go? Am I falling into a pattern of self-loathing that is just not serving me, and I'm further feeding this lower state of being or consciousness that I know is not truly what I am meant for?
And you're asking a lot of great questions. And for me, I generally go to curiosity when I'm in the lull, because I have a high likelihood of being highly critical and judgmental of myself. That's been a pattern of mine. And now I find that the antithesis to that for me in a moment like this is curiosity. Because
curiosity kills judgment.
Exactly. So being curious with yourself and then even with your partner is going to be something that's going to help remove a lot of that underlying resentment and judgment that might be fueling further perpetuation of this lull. So that's something for me that I found to be an effective tool as well. It's just trying to be as curious as possible.
Yeah. And then when you get curious and the answers will come forward for you, you probably need to take some time to sit in a quiet place by yourself for a little bit, because you need to be able to be in a place where you can receive these messages coming through. It's not going to happen when you're not giving yourself the time and space to do that.
It also could be active, though. It could be a walk in the woods.
Right.
It could be something where you're just
But
having
you need to
opportunity
be
for contemplation.
with yourself.
Yes.
And
But-
with your body, with being able to be in a place where you can feel and receive messages coming through your body.
And that's the most important part, is that you were saying with your body, it's getting out of the head and giving yourself an opportunity to have an open channel in the body for your body to receive the wisdom and for your body to feel
Especially
when it
your
comes online.
heart.
Yes.
You know, a lot of this is going to come through your heart. You could have thoughts that come into your head, but they're resonating with your body. Like maybe you get a feeling. For me, it's like tingles all over my body. I feel like there's electricity running through my body, and I know that's something of truth. That's something that has come through divinely into my body, and it might be received through my consciousness in my head, but also the consciousness of my body is receiving it too through my fascial system, which is one of the most primordial seats of consciousness. It is the most primordial, primitive seat of consciousness in our body. So if you are feeling this body intelligence in whatever way it comes through to you, know that that is just as, if not more, it actually, in my opinion, is more true than what's coming through in your mind.
Well, because you might have a belief in your mind, but when you're in your body, you're having a knowing. So going from a belief to a knowing, there's more certainty in that. So
Knowing
for you,
is more intuitive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the more tapped in you are to the highest self, the more knowing you experience in the body, the more you know that it is correct and true for you.
And nature is a beautiful facilitator of this. If you are in an environment where you can get out into nature and just take some time to be by yourself, it will help to facilitate this to come through. Especially if you can be in some kind of light source. And I've had people say, oh, there's no sunshine here. The amount of light that you get outside, even on a cloudy day,
Vastly superior to being inside.
so much greater than anything that you would receive in your home.
But that's
So-
responsibility. You know, go outside, get in the sun.
Even
Doesn't
when it's
matter if it's a
cold.
gray, gloomy day.
Even when it's cold. Another beautiful thing that I like to do is just create a beautiful sacred space. If you are not feeling drawn to nature, you'd rather just sit and be, and that's going to be more of a facilitator for you, creating a very sacred, beautiful space for you to be able to receive. That's not just a feminine thing. You create sacred space every morning for yourself too.
I go in my office and I read and I journal.
So allowing yourself just some kind of space to receive is very important to receive these messages to come through.
And these few things that we're suggesting and offering, these are opportunities to kind of move through that lethargy and that apathy that really sets in the lull,
Yeah.
especially this time of year. There's a lot of acquiescing to like, this is just the way it is. And we have to wait until
Yeah.
the springtime comes around to then
Yeah.
finally go ahead and take
I've
action.
seen, and that was something that I did want to address today too, and I've seen a lot of this online, is that, the thought that it's winter and this is normal to be more tired or have more aches and pains, things like that. I don't, yes and no. Like
It's both.
it's yes and no though, because I don't agree that this is a time to be to have more aches and pains. I don't agree with that. I do agree that you could be a little bit more tired. The days are shorter in terms of light, but winter is not just a hall pass to basically
Check out.
check out and do nothing.
Yeah.
That's not it.
That's a lack of responsibility.
There's a purpose to winter. And in winter, for me, what I've recognized is what's been happening and what I've been feeling in my body is that in winter, it's been time for me to go within and maybe be more inwardly focused so that I can receive, so that I can unravel the programmings and the conditionings or the beliefs that have not been my own, see them, be aware of them, like receive conscious knowing and awareness of them, so that I can then work to unravel them and get rid of them from, not that you're ever going to get rid of them, but that mastery, achieve mastery over them, become consciously aware of them, where they came from, so that I can recognize that they are not of truth and I don't have to choose to listen to them or operate by them anymore. And seeing these things in our conscious awareness is the gift of winter, because that time of being able to slow down, have a little bit less daytime during the day, that kind of forces us to shelter and come into comfort, and really a beautiful potential space for a lot of reflection. That's the whole point of it. It's that we can come within, and winter, the seed, so to speak, is dormant, but it's not actually dormant. It's doing the work behind the scenes that it needs to do, so that when spring comes, that seed is able to burst through the resistance of its shell and of all the layers of dirt and earth above it, and break through the crust, and now be able to see the sun and grow and bear fruit.
It's a great visual, actually, because if the seed were releasing its resistance, it would never actually break through the shell. The butterfly would not actually
you are
get out of
strengthening.
it would not actually come out of the chrysalis if it were releasing the resistance.
You
It's
are
actually
strengthening, gaining
yes.
awareness, and in your awareness and strengthening, you are reaching towards mastery of that resistance.
Exactly.
It's almost like, you're getting your reps in. You're recognizing these things, that you see the resistance from what it is, the illusion of it, truly seeing your resistance and the illusion of it for what it is, so that then when the time comes and the opportunity presents itself in metaphorical or literal springtime, for you to be able to break through that shell and move your way through those layers that have formed atop of you, you can take it and you can capitalize on it, because you have built up the strength within yourself, the awareness and the mastery to be able to accomplish that.
And another way of just phrasing this is that you're gathering your energy stores in the winter during these periods of intentional rest and the rhythm within the way that the winter is dictating, in order to then be generative in the spring and summer.
Yeah, and for me, this time of winter, both seasonally but also within my cycle, has been a beautiful time where these old patterns and beliefs have made themselves visible to me, and I've been able to receive them into my awareness and see them for what they are, and be able to kind of sift through them and disentangle myself from them. And part of the gift of this time is to be able to receive those messages and really come into awareness of and resonance with who we are. Again, the metaphor of the seeds, really beautiful metaphor, the true core seed essence of who we are.
The God kernel within you.
Well, in ancient Egyptian spirituality, it's all focused around the seed, and how the seed contains the essence of the wholly formed, fully developed plant, even before anybody can see what it's going to look like. When the seed is in the deep, dark depths of the earth, in the complete and total void, there's complete darkness. When a plant needs light to grow, this seed still contains the essence of what it's going to be. And so winter is a really beautiful time when we're in this place and of what seems like dormancy, to go into a state of remembering and reconnecting with that essence of who we are, even in the absence of light. That's when you get to strengthen and hone in your mastery of this resistance, to be able to reconnect to your essence and break through the illusion.
So you have this conscious awareness, and then you also have intentionality in this period of time, where now this time is for you and it's serving you in order to go ahead and then take on the initiative of all the things you want to do in the future, when the tides turn, so to speak.
Yeah.
But if we are getting stuck in the lull, we're removing the intention and we're just drifting aimlessly and wandering.
Right.
That's when we're squandering that time, and we're actually leaking from our seed. We've got leaks everywhere. Men might be literally wasting their seed with chronic porn use and things like that. So there's opportunities to actually harbor this within and allow it to truly ferment and then rise. And that's an aspect that I think a lot of us we're not consciously aware of.
Yeah. And so then the next step of this is, once you're reconnecting, kind of mastering your awareness of these illusions and your resistances, and reconnecting to the essence that you know that you are and that you want to come into, now your responsibility, the next way to get through this lull or funk, whatever is happening in your life, is to recognize and take responsibility for the responsibility that you have, your part in the equation.
Ownership.
Because, yeah, you can recognize. Here's the thing. You were sent here with a purpose, and really the purpose coming back to just experiencing joy and beauty in this lifetime. But you were sent here with a purpose, with an essence. Like your soul was sent as a little seed here. We need to reconnect with that. That was given to us. But we need to do our part to fulfill that promise for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's not just given to you.
No. And so I've spoken to Miles about this before, and I think responsibility can also be viewed as inner authority. And inner authority in connection with God, source, universe, the divine, whatever it is that you can connect to and resonate with. What does that divine force want for me? What was cast upon my heart? What are the desires that are in my heart? Whether it's desires in the way that you're living, where you're living, what you're doing, or just the quality of your experience here. I want to experience joy. I want to be surrounded by my family, the people that I love the most, whatever it is. Connecting to that, but recognizing that in order to bring that to fruition on the material plane, you need to then fulfill your half of the equation, which is taking action on it and taking ownership and responsibility for these things that have been put out for you, but your part in bringing that to be in the world. Because living through your head and through having desires on your heart, but never actually doing anything in this human body that we were placed on this earth in to do human things, never taking responsibility for that and never doing those actions is not going to bring those desires to you. There's no, this is, it plays into...
You're missing the experience.
You're missing the experience, but it also, if we're just waiting to be saved by something outside of ourselves, this goes back to what we talked about in the void. That's taking a very passive role. It's playing into inertia, and there's a very, 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 very slim chance that that will ever actually happen.
Or, I mean, stick at all. Like when it comes from within, you're able to help it stick.
Right, you're able to help it stick
Sustain.
because now you have learned the lessons behind it. You have disentangled from the things that are not of your truth and of your essence. We need to take accountability and responsibility for that which is ours and that which we want to bring into the world. And if we are not taking action and accountability and responsibility for our part in it, the things that we really, 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 truly, deeply desire to have and experience in this life, how can they come to be? How? I mean, this was such a big lesson for me, even just within the last few months of my life, was I had all these really big, beautiful desires in my heart for my life. And I had to take a very honest and humbling look at myself and say, what have I done in my part of this equation to make this happen? And it was nothing besides just living in my head and feeling these desires and wanting them, but not actually taking accountability and action to make them happen.
Well, if you've done the work to take this responsibility and actually step out of the void and step out of the lull, you've received the messages, then the next step is this aspect of becoming. There's a process of becoming the person that is capable of doing the things that you've had those dreams that you want to do.
It's an embodiment.
Exactly.
So embodiment meaning you take that on as part of your lived experience. Like that is just who you are every day of your life. It's who you be in your humanity, in your human form, the way that you are experiencing life and how you're going about life.
Exactly.
Making that part of your everyday changes your identity as well. And that's extremely empowering because once you start to incorporate these actions that you're taking and the way that you are changing how you operate in the world, based upon now having established a stronger, more true connection to that core seed essence of yourself, you are now taking two very potent, powerful aspects and creating them into one, merging them into a new identity for yourself in the world. And you're living that and you're being that every single day of your life. I mean, that's what we're here to do. Changing your identity means changing your lived experience. When you do that for yourself and you're changing your identity, the way that you're going about your life and experiencing your life, the things around you are going to shift as well. And that's when things that we perceive as miracles happen.
This very conversation is a resultant of our own process of becoming and going through these identity transformations and transitions from prior periods of lulls, prior periods of voids. So there is alchemization that is available to you if you are able to utilize the lull or the void as a purposeful thing.
And how empowering
not that we're assigning
is
meaning,
that?
not that we're assigning meaning, but that it is serving a purpose.
No, you do not need to go through the void to experience this, by the way.
No, and we're actually here to help you not have to experience the void. We want to help you collapse the timeline so you don't have to go through what we've gone through.
Yeah, but just reading the collective and reading what I've seen reflected from a lot of people is that a lot of people are feeling this lull and this slump, or just feeling funky and off.
Lethargy.
And I think that addressing it and bringing awareness to it and bringing awareness to the potential within it is so valuable. But this piece about embodiment is really so beautiful because it's so empowering. Because when you change that identity and the way that you were going about and operating in the world, and do it consciously every day, day in and day out, you're establishing new patterns and new habits for yourself that are literally changing who you are. And if you're into
changing your neuroplasticity, I mean, it's literally rewiring
it's changing
your
that,
brain.
But also, this is like way too big to go into here, but in a quantum way, you're changing the way that you are observing and interacting with the world.
And the way the world experiences you.
Therefore, there is no other option but for the world to change in response to that.
Sorry, I gave it away.
It's okay. But it's part of the observer effect. You're now changing the way that you're experiencing the world and observing the world. The world is going to change in response to that. The world is going to meet the frequency that you are observing the way and are experiencing the world and observing the world through is going to be met coming back to you.
That's all about vibration.
Vibration,
so the vibration that's emanating from you is going to now be a resonant match for higher vibration that is coming from the world that is around you. So now all of a sudden your resonance has shifted. So your frequency has shifted, the vibrations you're attracting has shifted, your magnetism has shifted, and now all of a sudden you are a magnet for all of the things you actually desire because you've taken responsibility. You've gotten to a point where you had the conscious awareness, you named the limiting beliefs that were present, that were keeping you stuck in the lull. You then went and took responsibility, and then you took precise action, and then you actually now are living an empowered, embodied existence in a conscious way.
And here's something, you might be listening to this, and this is something that came up for me too, so I'm going to name it. You might be listening to this and saying, that sounds like a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of work.
I thought you were going to say it sounds like a crock of shit.
Well, if it sounds like a crock of shit, then you can turn it off because this isn't the place for you. But the truth is, it is more energy. It is more energy because you are consciously breaking away from a field of inertia, and that is going to require energy. It's going to require energy to overcome your resistance. However, it requires a lot of energy, and energy in a very draining and disempowering and feels really, really bad kind of way.
To stay in the lull. To
stay in the status quo and not be happy and feel totally unfulfilled and just like life is passing you by. And because I had these thoughts come up for myself too. And I realized that I would rather put forth more energy to making these changes and to experiencing my life in a much more beautiful, bountiful way than feeling the pain of staying stuck in a life that I knew was half-lived and half experienced, and only had half of the potential that I knew that it possibly could.
Now, what's really important, though, is you're talking about energy output, right? In this case, though, the amount of energy we needed was high, but we had the capacity and the ability to generate that energy because we lived our life a certain way to keep our bodies as clean as we could in this environment. But our hypothesis, because we have not experienced this yet, but what I am hoping that we experience is that even though the energy was high for us to do this now, it won't be as high to do later because the environment that we're now in and the way we're living our life, the rhythm is not requiring as much effort. So in this case, it was a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And I think this concept of efforting, where effort could be more easeful and more in flow and more in alignment, or it could be really resistant and really hard and really driving.
Yeah, and if that's not, so obviously we're about to make a big change in our lives and a big move. We're moving from New Jersey to Arizona, across the country, and this has been many, many years in the making. Did it need to be this many years in the making? No, but that's where resistance came in.
I made it that way.
And regardless, if that's not something that you need to do, this is where taking vacations or just getting yourself into different environments and different experiences can be so valuable, because it gives you a chance to disengage from the patterns, the habitual, like very subconsciously habitual patterns that you have in place in your home, your most routine environment, the people around you who you have established rapport with and like a certain way of relating to and being with. A certain like frequency and vibration that you fall into just habitually when you're in certain scenarios or environments or with certain people, maybe like coworkers in your office, family members, whatever it is. Like, for instance, have you ever noticed that there's certain family members or friends that you talk to, and when you get on the phone with them or in conversation with them, the tone of your voice changes, the cadence of your voice changes, what you talk about changes. Yeah, and not in a good way.
You power down.
It's because it's habitual. You're meeting those people where they're at. So that's where getting out of your habitual environment, that's just kind of like reinforcing these things in you, and getting into a different environment, especially one that offers a greater ability to give you charge to receive.
Amount of sun.
Yeah, like
of sun. Literal sunlight.
Ability to move your, like, easy access to nature, go on hikes, whatever, explore, be outdoors. Or if you're somebody who prefers cities, like go experience culture and different communities and talking with people, if that's what gives you juice in life. Or like even just go to, a local coffee shop and like talk with people, whatever. It gives you the opportunity to unplug from what is habitual to you and experience something different that gives you a chance to expand your mind, to expand your view, to expand the way that you're experiencing the world in a way that's not habitual to you. It's completely new. So you're not falling into these patterns over and over and over again.
You're making an important point where travel can be that shock that you need to jolt the system to actually maybe even exit a lull.
Or like provide you with awareness. Like
Inspiration.
awakening. Yeah, I mean, when we went to Sedona for the first time, it was an instant soul resonance of, we need to be here. I don't know.
Like the body just came online like never before.
Yeah, and it was like, I don't know whether we're meant to be here for a long time or just to be here for a short period of time, but we need to be here for longer than just a week or two. And every single time we've ever gone on a vacation that's felt expansive in this way, we have been rewarded with being expanded in the process of experiencing that time away and that potential for us to unplug.
You're now talking about expansion, which is also important, and maybe another conversation, but the more you are expanding, the more that vibration and frequency is expanding, the more you will be a match for other people to be even bigger expanders in your life. And then now all of a sudden you have this entire new range of options available to you to continue to help you keep ascending toward that highest self. So that's something that, as we've gone through the expansion, contraction, another word for the contraction could just be a lull. So it is still necessary. It's a necessary aspect of the rhythm of life. That's why winter does exist.
Yeah.
It does serve a purpose, but it's when we're just throwing in the towel and saying, F it, I'm just going to wait, is when we're squandering an opportunity to actually really garner and gather those energy sources to then maximize our generative output and experience
In the
when
spring
the
and summertime.
spring and summer arrive.
And you bringing that up just brought up for me, like, if you can't literally physically leave your location right now and go on a vacation, you can choose to consciously kind of distance yourself or withdraw a little bit from those plugs in your life
Energy
right
drains,
now that
leaks.
are draining, or put you into that subconscious habitual pattern of a lower vibration or frequency. Like we talked about, that one friend or relative that you get on the phone with and instantly, like, your tone of voice, the way that you speak, the things that you're talking about, it's like gets pulled down a few notches. You can choose to, for a period of time, unplug from that, go within, and that's another way to kind of disengage from those habitual patterns and be able to come back into yourself and the truth of yourself if you don't have the ability to physically remove yourself from your location right at this time. And you can do it in a way that's very clean, where, you know, it's more vulnerable to do this, but it is more clean to tell that person, if you feel like this could potentially be an issue, hey, I'm doing a little soul searching right now. I'm going to kind of go quiet, go dark for a little bit, and I'll
Reach
see you
back
on the
out
other
when I'm ready.
side.
Yeah.
And like, please don't be offended. I'll see you on the other side. And if that person has a problem with it, then
They might not be the right person for you.
yeah, that that could be pointing to something
But
different.
we also lived intimately in an environment in dental school that was extremely prohibitive and very much contributed to this aspect of the long lull, the endless lull, because the environment and the attitude within the environment was so pervasive that there was really no escaping it. So in this case, having awareness, though, would have helped us to not keep feeding
Yeah.
the monster, because I started to personally adopt the language of the other people that were in my class with me about just misery loving company. So
Yeah,
that's where
suffering.
the language we're using also is contributing to the lull that we're possibly experiencing. So that awareness around, well, how am I contributing to the situation? What is my language like? What are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? What are my knowings contributing to this situation is important, because now you're then taking that ownership, that dominion that you were talking about, where you're giving yourself that power back in the situation, saying, you know what, I actually can be in control of how I'm
Yeah.
experiencing this.
And language is very important, whether it's the language that you are outwardly using in your conversations or the language that you're using in your mind when you're talking to yourself. And that goes back into the reparenting, or just relating to yourself as your highest self, as your highest emanation, and treating yourself with love and with just an emanation of light and kindness. And
It's also your inner child. How are you relating to your inner child?
And this is where, and I've used this with Miles throughout our relationship, is just speaking power and potential over Miles, and always speaking to his highest potential and power. And that has helped his growth journey tremendously.
Boom. Jinx.
And I think that's really what helped you approach, first of all, even be interested in growth, because you weren't when we first met. You were good with being kind of status quo, and
I mean, I was
walking
living the
along
life I
path
was
that
told
was
to
laid
live.
out,
you know?
laid out before you.
I was being a good soldier.
And because I spoke to your potential and your power, it never felt like I was trying to force you to be something other than what you were. I was just speaking to your highest potential and your highest emanation of yourself. But my point is here, when we speak to the highest potential or speak power over ourselves and the people around us, that's also changing the language that we're interacting with the world with, and what we're speaking literally and figuratively into existence. And just like how, our son, if he gets sick, I'll speak words of power over him. Like, you're going to feel so much better tomorrow morning. This is all going to be gone by tomorrow morning. Oh, your belly is healing. Your boo-boo is healing. Your body is healing itself. Speaking that very consciously over him, so that is the message that he is receiving, is is words of healing, words of goodness.
Rather than the perpetual messages of anxiety.
Yeah, not words of sickness, not words of, oh, you're sick right now. It's words of your body is healing. Words that show that his body has the innate capacity to heal, and it's going to heal quickly, so that he grows up understanding that that is something that his body has the potential to do, is heal very quickly. When we speak those words of power over ourselves and other people, that's another way of disengaging and unplugging from these very low, potentially low frequency, habitual forms of speaking, relating, thinking that we have. So shifting the language that we use into words of power, words of potential, words of love, kindness, of our highest emanation are super powerful in doing this as well.
The resonance is different. And like one of the things I love that he says, where I feel that we're doing a good job with being parents, is he goes, I know you can do it. I know you can do it. It's like, yes, I can, and I know you can do it. And it's like, no, you can do it. I'm like, no, you can too. So you try. It's really sweet. It's just a lot of fun.
Or he'll say, my body is healing itself.
Yeah, to live from this experience is so much more fun and exciting than the experience that we lived when we were younger. So yes, Caitlin's influence and inspiration in my life has helped me shift from the guy who was like, I'm going to play video games and drink beer at night for the rest of my life, which I genuinely thought I was going to do when I was 22, 23 years old. I was like, I'm never going to stop. To, I would never be doing those things now, because I recognized the amount of escape that it was offering at that time, because I was actually hiding my true self through those practices. And that was my own inner lull. That was my void. Was that period of time in my life through dental school where I had zero direction of who I was. I was just living life for everyone else. I feel like we've probably gotten to a point where we're pretty complete with this conversation. Do you have anything you want to leave people with?
No, I think we're good. I think we're really good.
I think we covered a wide range of topics here today in this conversation.
Yeah, I think we're good. Just kind of want to leave it at that. And something that our mentor Michelle just recently said to us is, recognize what is yours and what's not yours. Maybe the collective is feeling a certain way right now, like winter. I'm seeing a lot of things about wintering, and you don't have to take that as your truth if that is not the way that you want to experience this time. And you're allowed to write a more true, resonant truth for you. So I think we'll leave you with that.
Oh.
Yeah.
We'll see you all next time.